Of how I thought I met the man of my dreams and ended up living a nightmare. Finding a box of journals after I left my husband helped me see the patterns that I struggled to see when I was married. After leaving, I wanted to share my story, but I didn't trust my own memory or my perception of what had happened. But then when I found this box of journals I didn't even know that I had, and there in my own handwriting was outlined all the details that I struggled to recall. The names and identifying details have been changed for protection and privacy. At a year old, Aiden is as vibrant as ever. He still doesn't sleep much at night and doesn't nap at all. I'm squeezing in working part-time from home and taking care of Aiden, and I am already pregnant with our second child. Aiden's energy is off the charts. I take him on adventures to try to wear him out, but while the other moms sit around chatting, I am chasing after him as he scales the outside of the highest play structure, runs in front of swinging kids, climbs up the slide, and tries to stuff cigarette butts and other found trash in his mouth. I always end up coming from these adventures and excursions totally worn out, and he is not. There's this one mom I see at the playground every day, and she's perched on the side of the sandbox knitting this massive blanket while her son sits next to her shoveling sand into a bucket and dumping it out over and over again. And the bigger and more pregnant I get, the more annoying I find this peaceful and sedentary routine that they have going on. Aiden is just relentlessly active until we're in a hurry, and then he walks through the neighborhood, stopping and bending down every few feet to sniff and comment on each flower and weed on our path. And it is so infuriating and absolutely adorable. And Jim is great with Aiden, playing with him, taking him in the afternoon so I can work. When I was just about 6 weeks pregnant with my second child, I wake up and I'm bleeding heavily. I call my doctor and they send me to the ER where they perform an ultrasound. I can hear the baby's heartbeat, but they tell me that I'm having a miscarriage and I should just go home and wait. Jim had planned to help his brother work on his home a couple hours away that weekend. I am bleeding and emotional, and I ask him to stay home. I don't usually ask him things like that, but I ask him to stay home and help me with Aiden while I miscarry. And Jim tells me he can't. He can't let his brother down, and he will be gone all weekend. And somehow I am made to feel selfish for thinking of myself, he says, as he leaves me to miscarry alone with a toddler. I call my mom, and she takes Aiden all weekend. She brings me food and rents DVDs for me to watch, and I sit on the sofa all weekend, just eating, resting, taking care of myself, and giving the pregnancy whatever support I can, rubbing my belly and asking the baby to hang in there. And thanks to my mom for supporting my self-imposed bed rest and this break from running around after a toddler, I stopped bleeding and the pregnancy seems healthy and back on track after that weekend. Jim had been lobbying for us to move east for a while. I have never lived anywhere else. My whole family is close to me in San Francisco, but the cost of housing and the quality of schools is starting to become a concern. Jim's parents are divorced, and they have been since he was in high school, and Jim is always saying how much he regrets not having a closer relationship with them. So on our next trip east with my hugely pregnant self and the spirited toddler, we start to explore the possibility of moving. Unlike in San Francisco, the teaching jobs pay really well, the housing prices are accessible, and the public schools are great. It's really hard to say no. But the main reason for our visit is the marriage of one of Jim's best friends. The night of the bachelor party, all of his friends rent a party bus and take them out on the town. It was expected that they would be late, but Jim shows up after sunrise the next morning. He gets to his mom's house, fuming mad. He is highly agitated and tells me, his mom, his stepdad, how he and his friends were at a strip club, but he didn't want to engage. So he just grabbed a drink and hung out innocently in the back of the club. At some point he looks up and realizes he's alone. His friends left him alone in the club with no way to get home, and he doesn't have any money to get back. And this is in a time before cell phones, by the way. But the story seems absolutely ridiculous. But there his family is, just buying it. And his rage at being left behind, his insistence at being a victim is so consuming, I just naively choose to believe him. Upon our return to California, his pleas to move east intensify. San Francisco is the only home I've ever known. My family's all there, but it is a hard place to raise kids. We're living in a shoebox, and my parents have been distracted and less available lately. After several months, and with the birth of our second child quickly approaching, I finally agree, and we start making plans to move. I comfort myself with the thought that we'll be moving near his family and we'll have some support. For the second baby, I'm able to have a regular delivery, but the doctor suggests no pain meds because of the previous C-section, and I'm in labor for nearly 20 hours. I'm able to handle things pretty well. When the contractions get more intense, I turn on my favorite music and belly dance through them because that's how I know how to control my body the best. I don't have time for regular classes at this phase of my life, but I'm still dancing regularly, often with Aiden on my hip. The hospital is only about a mile away, so I labor at home as long as possible, maybe a little too long. And when we arrive at the hospital, they tell me to sit tight since there are no rooms available. But after about 2 minutes, they look at me and see how quickly the contractions are coming, and they find me a room. They hand me a gown, put in the IV, strap on a monitor, and it is way harder to handle the pain now that I can't move much. The hospital isn't ready for me, but the baby is coming. The staff is shocked at how quickly he's arrived, given that this is my first delivery, the scar tissue from my previous C-section, and he is over 9 pounds. When my parents come to visit, they try to act normal, but something seems off, and they seem a little bit startled by my appearance. And when I finally catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror, I'm horrified to see I have all these broken blood vessels all over my face. And when I mention it to Jim, he says, "Well, honestly, I don't think you needed to push that hard. If I wasn't so worried about you, I would have laughed." I suggest he imagine a bowel movement in the form of a 10-pound bag of potatoes. Then he can tell me how hard I should have pushed this giant baby into the world. Sean is the easiest and most angelic baby. He sleeps a lot, eats well, and is the happiest chunky kid. His nickname is Dreamboat. But parenting 2 boys under 2 is so incredibly hard, and Aiden is still his exuberant self. I'm attempting to work from home, but it's not easy, and Jim goes back to work the day after delivery, and I'm really struggling to manage it all. I am exhausted and dealing with a bad case of postpartum depression. I put on some weight after the birth of Sean. Jim looks at me one day and refers to me as his little hippo. I look at him in shock, and I ask him not to call me that. He tells me he's being sweet. It's a term of endearment. I tell him it's rude and not to say that. He rolls his eyes and insists that I'm being too sensitive and acts appalled that I don't have a sense of humor. I'm hurt, but I turn it into a joke, giving him a hippo Christmas ornament and a little stuffed hippo and other little tokens, as if I need to prove that I'm non-sensitive and that I can take a joke. Please like and subscribe to hear the rest of the story. You can also visit metamorphosistoolbox.com, where I have a blog of tools and resources I use to leave my marriage. Thanks so much for listening.